Hello and welcome to the study proposal on the impact of church-based support groups on mental health. My name is Joel Ogle, and I am a PhD student in the Department of Psychology here at the Liberty University School of Behavioral Sciences. We will look at a proposed study on the impact that church-based support groups have on perceived mental health. So to begin, let's look at an overview and introduction of the topic. For this study on support groups and mental health, we will look at the social psychology behind the aspect of church-based support groups and the influence that they have on participants' mental health and their perceptions of their mental health. We will look at the current research on the topic and identify key themes as well as gaps within the research. We will look at the benefits and limitations that those church-based support groups have, as well as a biblical discussion on the topic. We will then propose a study to investigate the dynamics of that impact to better understand individuals' perceived mental health within the context of a social psychology study. So, to begin with, let's look at the current research on the topic. There is strong scientific research that shows the effectiveness of both professionally facilitated and layperson-led support groups for individuals that are dealing with mental illness. Studies have also shown that churches and religious groups can serve as a haven for those individuals that are actively seeking mental health help. According to SAMHSA, faith-based groups hold significant potential in offering support to individuals that are dealing with mental health challenges, and they serve as some of the best forms of support and motivation, really motivating them to seek assistance in their mental health journey. One study from Grimm and Grimm found that 73% of support group programs within the United States include a spiritual component. That same study used the AA, or Alcoholics Anonymous, program to be the baseline for faith-based programs, given that the belief in a higher power is integrated into the 12 steps of recovery used in AA. Their study concluded that there is a significant relationship between recovery and belief in a higher power. They found that people who self-report faith in God throughout their recovery journey heal faster than those who reject faith in God. Another study from Harris, Edlin, and Larson showed positive correlations between religious involvement and outpatient mental health care use. They also showed that congregational support for those within those groups was statistically significant. Another study showed that support groups tend to lessen the psychological stress on individuals within those groups, as well as helping with feelings of anxiety, anger, and lead into greater life satisfaction and just overall optimism from the participants. So these support groups have a real strong need for helping people through their mental health journey. To go along with that, there is a great need for church-based support groups. In researching this, we found that most studies report positive associations between religious affiliation and aspects of mental health. Research showed that faith-based groups are extremely needed within the mental health community. Having associations with a religious group is inversely associated with substance abuse, substance dependence. Some examples that show this was a study by High that showed religiousness has a buffering effect on alcohol use. Another one showed that findings from church support networks tend to aid in mitigating mental health issues. One important note from the research is that the study from Grimm and Grimm drew attention to the current decline in religious affiliation that is going on throughout the United States. They concluded this to be a major health concern, given the large impact that faith tends to have on recovery that has been shown in this research. Therefore, research suggests that there is a great need for church-based groups in order to improve mental health. Let's look at some key themes in research. There were several key themes that recurred. First, groups tend to help build a social support network. These support groups tend to foster a sense of community and belonging. They provide individuals with a group of like-minded peers who tend to share similar experiences and walks of life, giving them the camaraderie and understanding within these groups that contribute to a lot of mental health support. So that really helps to build that social support network. Next, they tend to integrate faith and healing. Many church-based support groups intertwine faith and spirituality with healing and coping mechanisms. Participants often find comfort through their religion and their religious beliefs that research has shown plays a large role in their mental health journey. To go along with that, these groups aid in spiritual guidance throughout their mental health journey. The leaders within these groups often become mentors to the other participants, providing guidance and counsel that integrates spiritual practices and coping strategies in order to help them manage their mental health challenges throughout their journey. They create a collective sense of identity and belonging. The participants often develop a sense of shared identity within these groups, giving them the self-confidence to really push through their struggles. It gives them an identity that oftentimes has a sense of belonging. It helps to reduce stigma that is associated with the challenges that come with mental health issues. They help emotional expression, and in a lot of cases goes along with empathy from the other participants. Church support groups provide a safe space for people to express their emotions without fear of judgment. And a lot of times this allows them to really open up about their emotions, and in a spiritual context, this promotes a lot of emotional healing and just really pushes to resilience through participation in these groups. And then finally, another key theme that resulted was the collaboration in many cases with professional services. Research showed that a lot of church-based support groups collaborate with mental health professionals, and they know when to refer members out to those professional services when needed, rather than trying to keep them inside the group at all cost. This tends to create a much-needed bridge between spiritual support and professional clinical intervention in order to push people towards that. Research has shown that the first step in healing in many cases is that people will come to church, be plugged into a support group, hopefully a church-based support group that we're going to look at in this study, and then they will come there long before they will go to seek professional health. So there's a great need for church-based support groups in the mental health field. Let's look at a lot of the benefits that go along with church-based support groups. These groups have been shown to lessen psychological stress and a lot of the issues that go along with mental health struggles, such as stress, anxiety, anger, and then as a result will lead people into a greater life satisfaction and overall optimism about the future in their mental health journey. These groups also tend to mitigate mental health distress by using coping strategies. A lot of these members are shown spiritual components such as prayer, meditation, worship music, all these that can aid in managing stress, anxiety, depression, all of the triggers that we've talked about previously. However, as important as these benefits are, research also shows that there are some negatives or limitations of having church-based support groups. The first of which would be limited diversity. Some groups may lack diversity in terms of demographics or beliefs, which can limit the range of perspectives and potentially sometimes alienating those who don't fit perfectly within the group's demographic or belief profile, and in some sense they may alienate those people that don't believe the same way as they do. To go along with this, a lot of times when you go to a church-based support group, you will see differing viewpoints theologically. This could lead to conflict between someone's personal beliefs and the teachings that are going to be found within that group. This can lead to discomfort and sometimes pressure for the individuals that don't align with those beliefs. And sometimes those people may just be more comfortable going to a more secular approach than a church-based group. We did discuss how there is a great positive that many churches do refer out when professional help is needed, but there are some church-based support groups that have been found to have sole dependence on faith alone as the healing factor. These groups tend to rely solely on faith and spiritual guidance without considering professional interventions, and so these groups tend to kind of alienate the people that don't that need a little bit further help in their journey. There are also liability factors that need to be considered with church-based groups. Some churches showed that they simply do not want to take on the risk that is associated with having a support group within their church. However, on the other hand, there are numerous studies showing that churches have support groups, and they boast that as being part of their ministry model for outreach and aid into the community. So it can go both ways in that sense as well. So those are just a few of the limitations of the church-based support groups. Let's move now into looking at the biblical context, biblical discussion for this topic. While church-based groups are not specifically mentioned in the Bible, there is scriptural precedence for having support groups within the church. The Bible shows compassion and support for others as a main theme throughout the New Testament. In Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2, the Bible says to carry one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. In Hebrews chapter 10, the Bible teaches on community and fellowship in such groups, saying, "Let us consider how we may spur one another toward the love and good deeds, not giving up on meeting together." Really shows a sense of how a support group may be formed in support, community, fellowship, all in one. We also find themes of forgiveness, healing, hope, resilience. And then there's love and acceptance, another main theme throughout the New Testament that can be very applicable to a support group. In Romans chapter 15, there's a great call for us to strive for acceptance and support for one another. It says in Romans 15:7, "Accept one another, then just as Christ has accepted you, in order to bring praise to God." So there is great scriptural precedence here for support groups. And this is, of course, just a small glimpse at the biblical mandate for the church to really reach out to those around them in time of need. While there is sufficient research regarding the impact of support groups in general, a gap in research does exist regarding church-based support groups specifically and the impact that they have on perceived mental health. So we are going to propose a study in order to examine this gap and address the impact that these church groups have. So let's move into now looking at the overview of the proposed study. Moving into the purpose. The purpose of this study is to understand the impact that church-based support groups have on individuals' perceived mental health. So we want to look at the individuals within the support group and going to study the impact that that group has on their perceived mental health. In order to examine that impact, 3 research questions have been proposed. Number 1, how does participation in church-based support groups influence individuals' perceived mental health? Number 2, to what extent do church-based support groups contribute to reducing stigma that is associated with mental health issues? And then third, In what ways can church-based support groups collaborate effectively with mental health professionals to optimize mental health outcomes for their members? I feel that these three questions really will sum up the essence of this study. We saw where a lot of the both strengths and limitations that have been covered previously are covered in these questions. Specifically, the limitation that some groups do not collaborate well with mental health professionals. And so we want to look at how church-based support groups can effectively refer those out to professionals who need greater mental health assistance on their journey. So we want to look at how is that impacting the individual's mental health, and in what ways it is taking place. Let's now move into the method of the proposed study. The design that is utilized, we are proposing a quantitative project using a longitudinal study of repeated measures that will take place in 3 intervals. Participants will include a sample from diverse demographics, from various church-based support groups in order to appropriately look at the impact across denominational lines. We don't want to have an issue with skewed data from just one specific denomination or one specific group of churches. In order to do this, participants will be sampled from a support group network that is found on a support group, an online support group network. We will go to them and then have the different groups reach out to the individual participants, asking them for participation in this study. Data collection will take place through a few key measures that we will go over in the next slide. Like I said, this is a quantitative data analysis through longitudinal study, and therefore we are proposing a 12-month study period for observation on the impact at differing intervals. So we want to look at the beginning of the study, and then the 6-month mark and the 12-month mark, and then assess the difference that we find there. As far as proposed measures in order to assess the impact, 3 instruments are proposed. First, from Lovibond and Lovibond, is the Depression, Anxiety, Stress Scale. It's a 21-point comparison of the Beck Depression and Anxiety inventories. Next, from Corrigan, is the Recovery Assessment Scale, looking at overall recovery as a psychological construct. So we want to look at first depression, anxiety, stress, DASS. Then we want to look at recovery as a whole, and then finally bring in the spiritual component using the Richards Theistic Spiritual Outcome Survey in order to assess the development and validation of spiritual matters within these groups. Given that this is a longitudinal study, we want to look at the impact over time and then be able to assess the difference after the 3 levels of exposure to church-based support groups. That way we really understand the impact that the group is having on perceived mental health. So in order to accomplish this, we will assess the participants prior to joining the support group, then after the 6-month and 12-month mark of being in a church-based support group in order to look at the different impact on their mental health. There are a few potential confounds that need to be addressed here, and basically that just is the kind of gray area that the church and church-based support group will have with one another. Typically, individuals that are attending these faith-based support groups may also be influenced by other factors within a religious setting, such as being exposed to worship music, prayer, Bible study, congregational and community support, all of which were found in researching this topic to be a part of the support group model in order for religious coping. But it is going to be a little bit more difficult to assess which is having the most impact on the participants. The variables that are used here could aid or influence those individuals' stress levels, their journey towards healing, influencing the results of this study. Therefore, it may be difficult to isolate the support group alone as the variable, rather than allowing for their religious experience to influence their perceived mental health impact. So, in conclusion, this research proposal aims to investigate the impact that church-based support groups have on the participants' perceived mental health. This will be done by employing a social psychology framework in order to explore the mechanisms that influence mental health, healing, and outcomes. We want to seek to understand the essence of the church-based support group and their impact and implication on individuals' perceived mental health well-being. So kind of to sum it all up, this study will examine how participation within church-based support groups will influence individuals' perceived mental health status. And in doing so, it will look at to what extent the church-based support group has to contribute to individuals' perceived mental health status, how that support groups contributes to reducing stigma that is associated with the mental health journey, and then how church-based support groups are able to collaborate effectively with mental health professionals, or the lack thereof that is found in these support groups, in order to have a better understanding of mental health, the mental health impact that the group does have on the members of that particular group. So, in conclusion, this study aims to further the body of research that we have on support groups in general and mental health by showing the impact that the church-based support groups specifically have on a participant's mental health journey and their perceived mental health status. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. We'll conclude here with a reference list of the current research on the topic, as well as some additional information that was used in putting together this project. And thank you very much for listening to this proposal on the impact of church-based support groups on individuals' perceived mental health.